Uh, Today, I'm here to talk to you about Dabrowski's Overexcitabilities at Work. Linda. First of all, I'm going to briefly talk about who I am and why I'm here. Then I'll go over the 5 overexcitabilities and talk about how might one's OEs express themselves at work. What are some actions we can take to counterbalance our OEs? And also, what are some tasks, jobs, careers that are good for certain high overexcitabilities? And then also, I will talk about leading those with high overexcitabilities. All right, first up, who am I? My name is Carrie. I have been in the financial services industry for over 21 years now. And almost half that time, I've been a people leader. I've been a regulator, examiner, an analyst, deputy director, and I'm currently a senior audit manager at a very large financial institution. So why am I here? Why is this finance nerd in Dabrowski Congress talking about Dabrowski's overexcitabilities? Well, ever since really learning about Dabrowski and giftedness, overexcitabilities, TPD, I realized there's just not enough information out there. There's not enough content for adults. And then especially when it comes to the workplace, as my fellow presenter, Dr. Lynn Lim, mentioned to me a few weeks ago, we spend our time in elementary school and high school, 4 to 8 years, whatever, in college. And then the rest of our life we spend at work. So what are we really doing to talk about how our overexcitability show up at work, how all of our show up at work? Also, I think it's really important, at least at my work, I'm sure at several other larger companies, we've been talking about inclusion. And this is just another layer of diversity. This is neurodiversity, and it's just another way for us to be inclusive and to really think about and take into consideration how people with high overexcitability show up to work and what we can do to best make them feel safe and comfortable at work, and what we can do for ourselves as well. I am in the Chris's TPD study group. I joked a few weeks ago that I feel like it's more extra excitabilities versus overexcitabilities. Don't worry, I will stick with Dabrowski's term, but to me, overexcitability, like over, I think of, oh, Carrie, you got caught going over the speed limit. But I feel like extra is, oh, I added some extra chocolate syrup to your ice cream, something like that. But don't worry, again, I'll stick to overexcitability. So first up, motor overexcitability. And also, just to be upfront, all my definitions for the overexcitabilities I got from Mellow Out. They say, "If Only I Could," by Dr. Bukowski. So if you have his book, I got the overexcitability definitions from him. So psychomotor overexcitability, rapid speech, intense physical activity. There's pressure for action, organizing, competitiveness. Think about that chatter, the impulsive action sometimes, and then the workaholism. So let's say you do have a high psychomotor OE, or how do our psychomotor OEs show up in work? Not being able to sit for extended periods of time is one way for certain. Some ways to counterbalance your psychomotor OE if you're not able to sit is to have a standing desk. I have a standing desk. I'm currently sitting, but I can raise my desk, and I have a fatigue mat that I can stand on. You can have walking meetings. Often people with high psychomotor OEs, they tend to learn better when they're moving. Also, just taking a break and just walking away from your computer. If you're working from home, sometimes I'll go stretch. I'll go water my plants for 2-3 minutes just to get outside and stretch around. Another way psychomotor OE shows up at work is if you're getting really excited talking about a new idea, and you might talk so quickly that no one really understands you. So things to do to counterbalance that is, before you start talking, just take a deep breath, right? And kind of center yourself and focus before you start talking. Also, it's helpful just to have some talking points written down. That way you're not scattered in your discussion, and you can kind of help slow you down. Also, if it's something big, maybe you would want to practice it ahead of time with somebody, and they can help monitor your speed. What workaholic tendencies? I'm sure no one in the Congress has workaholic tendencies. I think it's important to be realistic about how much are you working, and it might come down to tracking your time. Are you working 12-hour days? Are you working 7 days a week? It's not sustainable. You will burn out. Maybe one thing you could do is set a timer. When your day is done, set a timer and commit to yourself that you're going to get up and walk away. I know some people will, if they're done at 5, at 4:30, 4:45, they start slowing down for the day and wrapping things up. So you could set an appointment or a meeting in your Outlook if you have that. Also, it's just really important when it's time to go, you get up and you go and you walk away. I know working remotely now, I've been working remotely since the first week of March 2020. It is difficult to walk away because my den is my office. All right, some jobs, careers, tasks, like you just have this high psychomotor OE, right? Where could that be a strength? And when I think about people that like to move around, they like to move their body, they like to use their hands. So organizers, painters and sculptors, somebody in sales that likes to talk and have the competitiveness, an auctioneer who has to talk super quickly, the micro machines guy and an auctioneer, right? Musicians, I'm a drummer for fun. Pianists, drummers, guitar players, so many instruments use their hands. It's really good. A landscape architect, they are creating your backyard oasis, right? And also kind of pair up with that, a gardener, or just gardening really as well. That could be something good for someone with a high psychomotor OE. Also, public speaking just kind of helps get all that energy out. All right, sensual. So sensual OE at work is, a little tricky. When I was thinking about work in the generic sense, like what is work? I was thinking volunteer work is one option. When I think of paying work, I kind of was thinking more of those of us in corporate America where we don't get to necessarily flex our emotional OEs and our sensual OEs, because I don't, sit around at work with piles of fabric around me. So OE is this enhanced sensory and aesthetic pleasure, right? The seeing, the smelling, the tasting, the touching, the music, the words, all that. The sensual expression of emotional tension, though, is overeating, buying sprees, and wanting to be in the limelight. So what do the sensual OEs look like in the workplace? Sensitivity light, for certain. I do have lights on right now, but I typically work in the dark. I like it a lot. If you're working in the office, maybe, and you do have sensitivity light, maybe you could talk to your manager about just alternative lighting options. When I was in the office, I used to have a desk lamp, And when everybody would be gone for the day, I'd turn on all the lights, close the blinds, and just have my desk lamp on. Maybe you have sensitivity to sound. Use noise canceling headphones. If you can, try to work in a quiet area, and then try not to sit by a door or a high traffic area. In not the office that we moved out of, but the office before that, in my direct line of sight, there was a door that clicked, and it was a thud when it closed, and I could just hear it and see it all the time. Sensitivity to smells. Is appropriate to implement kitchen rules for your office if you're in the office. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme, but the only fish that belong in an office are a Swedish fish or a goldfish cracker. Also, I've seen memes around or content around this more lately, but this constantly getting up to go to the fridge for a snack, I think it's affecting people that work from home more than those that work in the office, but it could go either way. So I would say if that's how your central OE is showing up at work, I would really ask and look at what foods are you eating. Are you eating high quality foods? Maybe try to eat more protein to satiate you better. And then if it's just this, it just is this sensory drive that marches you over there, just put a sign on the fridge that, no snacking. All right, so what are some work tasks, jobs, careers where a high central OE would be a strength, right? I think about their senses, who likes the limelight? So artists, musicians, art teachers. I also thought a seamstress or a fashion designer, they've got the fabrics and the silks and the velvets and the satins, and they're getting to play around with all the different textures. Interior decorator. Who want to decorate your den or your living room? I would want someone with a high central OE, right? Because they will make it super cozy. Also, a jewelry designer. They get to look at the different stones, the colors, the spectrum of colors, and the shapes and all the different metals. And then also an actor. The OE. So this is that intensified activity of the mind, the thirst for knowledge, the curiosity, the 50 browsers open. And I like this guy in the picture. He's got a laptop, he's got his dual monitors, but he's on his phone. And he's just swallowing up tons and tons of information. There's also, the reflective thought piece of the intellectual OE is that thinking about thinking, the metacognition piece. Let's say you have a high OE, right? So it could show up at work is you've just run out of new learning opportunities. Like you've learned your job. And let's just say that you're there. You've run out of new things to learn. You could work on developing soft skills such as communication, public speaking, leadership, problem solving. Maybe your company has some free training. You can look into that. One goal I set for myself in 2019 was to do more public speaking, and then the pandemic hit. But I did public speaking within my profession of auditing. Let's say you don't want to learn soft skills, you want to learn some new technical skills. You could learn, data analytics for anyone that's in the business world, that is huge. Right now, programming languages, just a new software program. So let's say your job is just, not only you've just learned everything, it's just not challenging, it's not stimulating. Go to your boss and talk about what's next in your career. If going up is something that you're interested in, maybe some stretch assignments to help you get to the next level so that there is something challenging and stimulating. If you work for a larger company, you could research positions outside your department, but still within your company. Also, your company might be open to what we did before the pandemic. We'd have people from other business units come and sit with us for the day and learn about us. That's definitely an idea. You can ask your boss, what challenging problem do you need help solving? Like, what could you do for your boss? And something that will be challenging for you. So let's talk about what tasks, jobs, careers are good for people with high intellectual OE. So I was thinking, who spends a lot of time asking questions or putting puzzle pieces together? A researcher, an investigator. I put pretty much my 21 years of my career. Auditor, I was a bank examiner, and I have a lot of consultant functions within my job. But we are constantly asking our internal clients questions because we have to understand their job enough to be able to see the weaknesses. So we are just constantly asking questions. One thing that we learn is how to ask questions and how to ask the questions, and then how to ask the next question. Like, what's the next question? Also, journalists, they ask a ton of questions and they're putting puzzle pieces together, right? Attorneys, just think of all the law shows on TV where they are questioning the witness and they're just asking questions. Then also something that could be a good career is something that you need ongoing training and certifications. Maybe your field has changes so that you have to get training, there's new developments. In my space, IT auditing is constantly evolving, and just the IT space and financial services. But something that has a lot more innovation in it would be a good career for someone with a high intellectual OE. Imaginational. Okay, again, I was thinking about from my perspective, it's this is kind of for corporate America, right? So you can't really get creative with accounting. At the end of the day, there's a business, even if you're an entrepreneur, there's a business to run, and you can't use your imagination when it comes to accounting or just run a business. So image and metaphor, just that rich invention and fantasy, the capacity for living in a world of imagination, the fairy tales, the private worlds, the spontaneous imagery as an expression of emotional tension. That's just elaborate dreams, things of that nature. Low tolerance of boredom and a need for novelty. Let's say one way an imaginational OE shows up for you at work is you just find yourself, you have this need for novelty. You like your job, but you just need on occasion something new, novel to work on. These are some things I've done in my career. Identify gaps in your current departments, like in the processes, procedures, maybe training material, or just desktop guides. If the document doesn't exist, you can develop it. And then maybe if it does exist, you can update it. So one thing that I did in my previous role, is we had people come into our office that we trained them on Access and just about general credit union things. So I ended up recording a series of training videos, and then I just burned them onto DVD because it was a long time ago. So whenever trainees came in, I could just hand them DVDs and they could watch it and ask questions. So it's finding a project that gives you some novelty every once in a while. And then let's just say your job responsibilities are built on this rigid system and it just doesn't allow for imagination or creativity. I think that's when You use your imagination and your creativity to come up with creative solutions to problems. And maybe they're problems that no one else has seen, but it's just having a way to express that imaginational OE. So what are some good careers if you have a high imaginational OE? So I think of who uses the use of images and metaphors, and who likes to create a private or new world. Writers, poets, artists, graphic designers or just designers, photographers, videographers, inventors, right? This is where the inventors come in. Playwrights, and then actors and actresses. Emotional OE. This is when we have these extreme emotions, right? They're complex. Someone with high emotional OE, they can identify with others' feelings. They are aware of this whole range of emotions, right? This thing that I found most interesting is the inner dialogue and self-judgment piece. I never thought about that, actually. I don't know why, as part of our emotional OE, but it is very true. Inner dialogue and self-judgment. So one thing that I have found helpful for some of my employees over the years is you should be doing you should be doing performance reviews. Quarterly, at least, I think is best practice. So when you are preparing your quarterly performance review or your performance review before you talk to your boss, it's good to create a document, and then you have your achievements written out. Part of the performance review is showing your boss, hey, I did these things. But the nice thing about having all your achievements documented is that you can go look at them. So when you have that, you're judging yourself on your work or how far you've come, you can just reference this document. I mean, it does take intention, and you can see all the things that you've accomplished. Let's say you're shy. Maybe you're reluctant to speak up at meetings. You can ask your manager if you have team meetings, can I present something at my next team meeting? Maybe challenge yourself. I'm going to say something over the next 3 meetings. Like, that's going to be my goal. It's probably my favorite. You have a need to act upon perceived wrongs or injustices. Wherever you are in America, the world, whatever, there are definitely issues to get upset about right now. Many issues. If this is how your emotional OE expresses itself, maybe with your boss's permission or your company's permission, maybe you set up a group and you find other people that feel very strongly about this social justice. I am a member of it's our build group. It's our 2nd year. The building inclusion and leveraging differences. It definitely has an anti-racism twist to it. They're not twists, but that's a big component of it. We also have a women's leadership group. We have a veterans group, an environmental group. If there's something that you feel strongly about, this is a good way to express that at work. Okay. You have this high emotional OE. Where would it be a strength? So I think about who fights against social injustices. Which jobs and careers, who needs a high level of empathy? So anyone doing DEI, equity, inclusion, or anti-racism work, as a profession or within your company, if you have a high emotional OE, it's a good thing. Counselors, social workers, anyone doing nonprofit work. And then also, I believe a people leader, just being a leader, I think it's good to have a high emotional OE. Let's say you volunteer, you have some people volunteer with you, they have high OEs. Maybe someone on your team that you manage has a high OE. So I just want to go over a few ways that we could really, back to this neurodiversity and building a more inclusive workplace. How can we do that while thinking with the lens of our OEs? And this is for anyone that's remote or in an office. So first, I wouldn't assume that your employees have OEs. You can, if they come to you, maybe they've said something in passing about lights, and maybe you can talk to them and just say, oh, you mentioned one time that the lights were bright. Let's talk about that. Like, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can work out. The noises, I think it's really important for us to be aware if someone does have a high central OE and the noise is too much. I mean, they're not gonna, first of all, they're gonna be frustrated and they're not gonna be productive. And that will even more, right? So just really carving out a space, if you can, away from noises. And then, I do remember back in my examiner days, there was one credit union that was in a paper mill and it smelled terrible. But so if there's something like that in an office, just talking about those things. Let's say you manage someone with a high psychomotor OE. I strongly recommend that you do not make people with high psychomotor OEs get on video. Because if you make them get on video, they're tethered. And remember what I said earlier, these are the people that learn better by moving. Also, sometimes someone who has high psychomotor OE just gets uncomfortable sitting here and not being able to stretch. Also, they'll workaholics. If you're someone that has workaholic tendencies, if you're their leader, it's really sitting down with them and having a specific discussion about what is your workload. Do you have too much work to do? Let's talk about how we redistribute it. Also, though, when you're having this discussion, you have to be open to the possibility that this person with the high psychomotor OE might be doing the work of 2 people or 1.5 people, right? But seeing once you take the work off, it might take adding another full-time employee. Also, you're meeting with your employees. One thing that actually what we do talk about is work. We talk work-life balance. However, I think it's important just to focus on how much are you working. So talk to them, how are you disconnecting? I've heard some people will cover up their computers. I'm waving because I have 2 large monitors and then my laptop and then another laptop over here. All right, you made of someone with the high intellectual OE. You're not going to want to micromanage them. You're going to give them just autonomy. You trust them enough, right? Because they're your employee, you've hired them. Try to give them some stretch assignments, maybe something new, where there's new information to learn, right? Or just give them a challenging problem to solve. Maybe it's something that you've been working on and you just need a different point of view. Get them on a call and let's hammer this out. If you have an employee with a high emotional OE and you can tell that wanting to fight social injustices at work somehow, give them the space to do that, right? A discussion about this is the workload, this is what I expect from you. And then maybe 2 hours a month or every other week, I don't know, whatever works for your department and your team, but give them the latitude to go out there and to really, I mean, it's a driver. If anyone is a social justice person, it's an intrinsic drive, and they will be happier for it, and the world will be better for it. Also, if you have an employee with high emotional OE, I think it's very important that we are empathetic with them, especially if they are having these, range of emotions, deep emotions, especially with everything that's going on in the world. It's to give them the space to feel and to make sure that's a safe space that they can share with you, obviously respecting work boundaries. But I think having empathy as a leader it's not the most important thing, but I do feel like it's one of the most important things. So all in all, I appreciate everyone watching this. I was super excited to work on this and present this. It is something I'm passionate about. Just learning how to share information for adults. That is something that I work on in my volunteer space. I am on the same board. And also, I just think it's very important that we start having these conversations about adults and then our overexcitabilities. They influence us in all aspects of our life, obviously, but there's 40 hours, at least 40 hours a week you're working, and your overexcitabilities make up who you are, which is how you show up to work, right? I don't think that it's necessarily healthy to squish your overexcitabilities at work. And there are some things that are just not going to be allowed at work. Again, I can't bring tons of fabric and velvets and like drape them all around. I mean, I'm at home, but working within work, honestly, and when we volunteer, and how can we use those overexcitabilities to show up, to bring our best self to work. So thank you. If you have any questions, I have my email address on the last slide. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. If you are a people leader or an employee that you don't have regular performance reviews and you want my cheat sheet that I use with my employees, you can send me an email. Again, thank you. And I hope everyone enjoyed the 2022 Dabrowski Congress.